Hello, breaking news today. Shocking change in Ukraine map. The Russians had to stop all their attacks on two fronts. Ukrainian forces are now taking steps in a much more organized and planned manner against the Russian occupation troops. Military aid from the USA and Western European countries also provides a great deal of support to this new war strategy of the Ukrainian armed forces. With the tension and violence in the war reaching its peak, clashes and offensive operations started to increase rapidly. Currently, the focus of hot clashes is the Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine. The center of the conflict in eastern Ukraine shifted from Sodar and Bakhmut to Olyr. In addition, the southern front lines of Ukraine have started to become quite active in recent days. In both regions, the Ukrainian armed forces conduct both defensive and offensive operations against the invading Russian. Especially this week, serious clashes took place between both sides of the war in the city of Olyr, in the Donetsk region. After long clashes, the Third Army of Ukraine surrounded the Russian troops in Olyr with an ingenious counterattack today. The headquarters of the Russian troops were blown up, and according to the Ukrainian General Staff, 109 Russian invaders were eliminated and 188 wounded. In addition, Ukrainian forces destroyed one Russian tank, platoon, and Russian aircraft. Why did the Russian army attempt this dangerous Olyr and Bakhmut to surprise the Ukrainian army and offer a victory to the Russian people? What kind of offensive operations is the Russian army preparing for in this Olyr region? Do the Moscow authorities think that in this way they can stop Ukraine's advance? Or does Russia have an idea to demoralize Ukrainian soldiers? The answers to all these questions are waiting for you with their striking details in this video content that we have carefully prepared. Let's take a look at what happened today in Olyr, Zyria and Bakhmut between Ukrainian and Russian troops in the latest, accurate, and official updates as Ultimate Ukraine. We take the information we use in our informative content from the most accurate and consistent, whose reliability has been approved together with the official information of the UK, USA, Ukraine, and Russian defense ministries and NATO secretariats, and we present them to you in a comparative and collective way with the hard work and analysis of our specialized team. By turning on notifications, you can be informed about the latest updates in our special, and you can also support us by subscribing. Today, the Russians began to attack the center of the city of Olyr. The invading troops held dominion throughout the day in this region for months. The Russian army has been trying to achieve significant success here using motorized rifle units and marines. For this purpose, the invading troops carry out violent attacks almost every day in the city of Olyr. As we mentioned, Russian troops tried to make an attack on this city again at noon yesterday. Fortunately, the Ukrainians made the ingenious choice, and instead of trying to fight the Russians from inside the city, the Olyr entered the Russian-occupied suburbs with their tanks behind the hills. With this development, the Russians were almost unable to attack the city of Olyr, and had to focus on solving the problems in the region. Most recently in this area, the Russians carried out a large-scale artillery bombardment and advanced in two separate directions in the city of Olyr. Also, a few days ago, the invading forces had begun to attack Ukrainian outposts in Olyr. Russian troops also captured areas just opposite Olyr. After yesterday's fighting, after this win today in the same location, the invading troops started to attack the Ukrainian. At the same time, Russian troops began to advance towards the PCA region. Thus, the Russian forces created an opportunity to attack the hospital in Olyr, which they occupied in the bombardment they carried out yesterday. These hospital buildings are protected from attacks as they are about 400 meters from the main Ukrainian positions. For this reason, the Russians advanced to these areas and captured the remaining areas of the hospital. Ukrainian soldiers, on the other hand, did not just passively defend against these attacks of the Russian forces. In the first moments, yesterday, the 3rd Ukrainian Army had already started a striking counterattack on the Russians after regrouping in Olyr. Today, the Ukrainian forces intensified their counterattack even more. Military groups of the Ukrainian armed forces advanced with tanks from behind the hills to weaken the Russian defense and drive the invading troops from the streets to the north of Olyr. Along the wooded areas of the north of Olyr, Ukrainian troops approached these areas. Ukrainian tank troops fired fiercely at these areas of Olyr, which were occupied by Russian. Under the protection of this heavy fire, an advancing Ukrainian assault group advanced rapidly in the open field and had a chance to take positions near the first blocks in Olyr. Later, the Ukrainian forces increased their control in the northern part of the city of Olyr in the ingenious counterattacks of the Ukrainian Third Army forces in Olyr. 109 Russian soldiers were killed and 188 wounded. In addition, in just one day, the Russians lost 4 tanks, 3 Afis and 3 Orlan, 10 drones within the borders of this region. It seems that the strategic importance of Olyr in the Donbass war will cause Russian losses in this region to increase much more. Currently, the control of the city of Olyr is about to pass to the control of the Third Army of Ukraine. This is pretty bad news for the Russians because the invading Russian forces will no longer be able to attack the city of Olyr using the main attack groups. The fact that the Ukrainian forces established a dominance here is pushing the Russians for the moment. Only the frontal war. However, if the Russians try to cross the Ukrainian-controlled road in the northern direction of Olyr, the invading troops become open targets and are caught in the crossfire by the Ukrainian army. Ultimate Ukraine is a global social media news and broadcasting company. As Ultimate Ukraine, we prepare the most up-to-date and striking news, the fullest, the most satisfying, collective, and accurate information from reliable official sources, objectively with the comments of our expert staff, and we strive to deliver them to you as quickly as possible. With our original licensed content voices and professional narrator staff, you can help us improve our content by sharing your valuable comments with us. In another active front of the war, in the city of Oryvy, in the Sapir region, it was claimed that the Russian forces made gains. In this city, it was claimed that the Russian troops carried out an offensive in the past few days. The statements of the Russian Ministry of Defense on this issue were that its own forces continued to advance in the city of Oryvy. The Russians also declared that they had dominance in this area before the counterattack by the Ukrainian forces in the city of Olyr in the Donetsk region. But as we noted, it's unlikely that Russia will make any significant progress near Oryvy of the Zaporizhzhia and Olyr of the DTS region. In the past 6 days, Russian internet commentators have claimed that Russian forces have made significant advances in 2 areas, breaching Ukraine's defenses. There is no evidence of reports that Moscow forces have dominated most areas near Oryvy in the Zair region and near Olyr in the Donetsk region, 100 kilometers to According to UK intelligence, Russian troops probably carried out local attacks near Oryvy and Olyr. However, Russian forces failed to actually make any significant progress. The British intelligence report has also a realistic possibility that Russian military sources deliberately spread misinformation in an effort to imply that the Russian operation is gaining momentum. As reported, British intelligence cast doubts on the Russian Federation having any success near Oryvy and Olyr as Russian military sources deliberately spread disinformation. In fact, the Russian administration has been implementing this strategy of spreading fake news since the beginning of the war. But so far this non-war strategy has not yielded any returns to Russia. On the contrary, the Russians suffered a great deal from these. In the city of Olyr, it is impossible to talk about any gains of the Russian troops in this area due to the offensive and the achievements of the Ukrainian forces already. However, it is known that there are still violent clashes in Oryvy city of Syria region. The false intelligence that Russia is trying to spread, on the other hand, reflects the possibility of Ukrainian forces to seize both Olyr and Oryvy. In any case, we can see that the Ukrainian forces are still defending both in the east and south, and are carrying out new offensive operations in these areas. In the following days, we'll be back with new news from the Ukrainian battlefield.